Hello there! Experimental video today. Do you like those games which revolve around military conflicts? And do you have friends who like to play those games with you? Well, to the 5% of you who said yes to both questions, boy, do I got a thing to sell you. Basically, the hardware version of Company of Heroes. If you know me, you know that I like Warhammer 40k, and that love started a long time ago with the tabletop game that entire franchise is based on. I always liked to build models, and I always liked those RTS games, like StarCraft. So combining that was awesome. As you might have guessed, I'm a nerd. And as a nerd, I like things like conventions. No, not those. Yeah, okay, those too. But I meant games conventions. And at a recent one, I met some nice folks from Warlord Games, and they super spontaneously agreed to tell me all about their flagship game and some upcoming content in a little interview, which I'm going to share with you today. Introducing the tabletop game Boltaction. It's similar to Warhammer 40k, just cheaper and more grounded in reality. You see, Warhammer 40k has religious zealot space Nazis. Boltaction has the real ones, made of plastic. Huh? You get what I meant with the hardware version of Company of Heroes. It's a World War II tabletop game. And after we saw the little presentation on the tabletop game, we are going to see a beta version of an upcoming spin-off board game which takes the core mechanics of Boltaction and compacts them into a nice board game. Quadratisch praktisch gut, as we say in Germany. Oh, and excuse the audio please, this was super spontaneous. I did not bring a microphone. So, Peter, tell us what we got here. What is Boltaction?
Okay, so Boltaction is a 28mm strategy war game where all set in World War II, where you can take control of lots of different armies, all your troop choices, loads of detail, lots of great things to do. You collect your miniatures, you stick them together, you paint them, and then you play games with them. Okay, so much like other war games, you take it in turns. The thing that's absolutely wonderful about Boltaction, that's completely unique to Boltaction, is the order dice in which you use to take a turn. So your order dice have different orders on, so you can ambush or you can advance, you can fire, you can run. So these represent the different actions you can take in your turn. You have one dice per unit in your army, and they all go in a bag. And then you've got different coloured dice to represent the different coloured armies. To take a turn, you reach in, you grab a dice. If it's your colour dice, you get to activate one of your troops. If it's the other person's colour dice, then they get to do one of those. And that adds a randomness to the game. That means that as you go through, you might not get the turn that you want. So you're going to have to constantly readjust your strategy, constantly think about what it is you're going to do, and then plan out very carefully how to respond to your opponent's actions. Okay? Just like other war games, it's a case of activating. We're measuring, we're rolling dice to see who hits, to see what happens to different things. One of the lovely things about Boltaction, it's really, really cool. We have pin markers, and what that represents is how things are shooting and the impact that has. So, for example, if this unit is shot but nobody dies, they may start picking up pin markers here. What happens then is it represents them being scared or not moving. So anybody else shooting against them, it's easier for them to hit, and there's rules for that. But also, if you want to then activate that unit and you want them to go and do something, you have to pass a test. For each pin marker, that makes it one more difficult on your dice roll to make that happen. So, loads of strategy, lots of thinking, lots of working out what you're going to do, as well as dealing with the results of what dies. If one of your unit dies, your dice comes out the bag. So as you go, you may get fewer dice, which means your opponent's going to get more and more turns. They start controlling the game. Different scenarios, different objectives. So you might play a capture objective, you might play for 6 turns. Whoever owns that objective at the end, they win. Or you might just decide to line up your troops, fight it out, see who dies first, and that'll be the end of the game. So lots of different things you can do, loads of different scenarios, loads of different parts of the world to fight in. So you can play in Normandy, you can play in Europe, you can play in North Africa. But also you can make up bits you want to do and go from there as well. So really, really exciting, really, really great game, plays wonderfully, and one of my favourite games to play that Warlord makes.
Alright, how long does a round usually last? For how long can you play this game? Let's say with the start box.
So what you'd probably look to do is set aside a couple of hours to play a whole game. In terms of setting up the table, placing your terrain, creating your scenario, agreeing those bits, setting up your troops. So it's quite a nice way to spend an afternoon, but you need to dedicate that time to it to get the most out of it. You play a smaller game, you might be able to play quicker, but actually to get the most out of it, you want to take your time a little bit more and really enjoy that process of everything that you go through, setting up and choosing what to do.
Thank you very much. Most tabletop games, like Boltaction, make it pretty easy to start and pick up the game. There are beginner boxes, which include the rules and 2 armies. That lovely gaming table you just saw, with the beautiful terrain inspired by HBO's Band of Brothers, is sadly not included. That is something you'll have to build yourself. Your local hobby shop or model railroading shop is your friend for that. But for the beginning, the kitchen table or the floor with a couple of crates will do the job. I've fought some of my most epic battles amongst shoeboxes and painted styrofoam packing material, so there's no bound to your creativity. You can build great terrain out of cheap stuff or even trash you have laying around. And now to their upcoming board game, Vanguard Normandy. Just a heads up, what you see here is not a final version. This is a test version. So the final board and the games and the miniatures and the cards will look a lot better.
As I understand, right here we have a prototype of a new board game version of Boltaction.
Yeah, so what it does, it's not Boltaction, but it takes some of the key mechanics that we talked about in Boltaction and puts that into a board game, so it feels familiar. The 2 bits that it takes the dice pool to do the random turns, but it also takes the pin markers to represent the how things are getting shot and how things change during the battlefield. So each unit that you're going to be able to take will have a marker, and they go in the bag. And in the same way, we pull that out, and that decides who goes first. And that's quite different in board games, because typically board games, you'll get a turn, I'll get a turn, then you'll get a turn. So again, you're going to have to constantly be thinking, constantly adapting to the things that change in the game. Rather than putting pin markers on the models on the board, the pin markers will go on your cards, and it just stops the board from getting too cluttered with lots and lots of little bits of representation of what's going off in the game. However, it's not as complicated as Boltaction, but I would not describe it as the simplest of games either. And lots of strategy involved as well. So as you go through, you're going to collect objectives, and those objectives gives you resources, and those resources allow you to then deploy more complicated, more powerful units, or actually spend those points to bring those units on. So you have to take control of those objectives. To win the game, it's whichever, or the person that loses is the first person that gets to 0 points. So both sides start with 100 points, but both sides lose 5 points per turn. That means that it's a 20 game turn in total. However, if you control more objectives than your opponent, they will lose those points quicker than you will.
Basically like Battlefield Conquest, as you described.
Absolutely, that domination mode in Battlefield, so it actually keeps the pressure on in the game. So there's not... Tactics comes from constantly doing things, not by sitting and waiting, because it forces you to play the game and go through that. There's lots of little bits of detail though as well, so you can deploy things like smoke if you want to hold an objective. That makes it harder to see and hit you. Terrain will give you the ability to see or not to see your opponent. Mortars can fire further, they're not controlled by the terrain in certain ways. We are still developing the rules for this. We've got loads of playtesting to do to work out exactly how it's going to work in the end, but we're really excited about how the line of sight and how those things work. We're going to use custom dice as well. These are prototype dice. You can see we've written on them the bits. So, H will be a hit, G for a glance, and then you've got a miss as well. So for example, if you're trying to shoot infantry at a vehicle and you roll 2 glances, that will count as a hit maybe, and that will allow us to just work in more detail to the game, so it's not so complicated in terms of having to roll a 3, 4, 5 and a 6 and -1 and +1. So it just makes it a little bit tidier, more for a board game. So the board we just looked at in Boltaction probably represents about one of these squares. So this is a real zoomed out version of the game. We're going miniatures. We're going to use small miniatures. These are not necessarily going to be perfectly scale accurate. We'll make miniatures that are cool and look really, really good. So when we're playing the game, they represent those the units that we want them to, and they look good. They're about 6mm in scale, but that doesn't mean they're all going to be perfectly in scale to each other. So I'm really looking forward to, as we do more of these prototypes, we'll move the game on and we'll move it from this alpha stage into a beta stage. It's going to be really, really cool.
You said potentially people will be able to join the beta stage?
So we will do some play testing for sure. What we'll do is hopefully we'll include the link to vanguardboardgame.com. If you go there, sign up on the newsletter. When we run some play testing, things like that, we may send an email out to people that are interested, signed up, and actually can have a go at play testing their game for us, give us loads of feedback. We're really committed to making sure this is an absolutely fantastic game. It plays really well, and it works on its own. One of the features I'm most excited about though, and this will need testing, is that you can play a single player game. So you've got that solo play available. That means so if all of your friends are out there, nobody's around and you really want to play, you can sit down and you can play against like an AI system that allows you to do that. If not, you can have 1, 2, 3, 4 players. We're planning on doing expansions and growing the game, adding in more forces. It's likely to be Germans versus US because it's Vanguard Normandy to begin with. But we're looking at loads of really cool options, things that we're going to do.
All right. Thank you very much.
Whether you are a tabletop gamer or came into this as a novice, I hope you found this video to be interesting. Tabletop games and classic board games are awesome. I play them very often. Grab a couple of friends, a few bottles of beer and coke, and you'll have a good time. If you want a look at one of those occasions where I had a good time, check the link in the upper right corner or the pinned comment down below. Last year we took a look at the board game to the movie The Thing, one of my favorite horror movies. Go check it out. Also, a massive thank you to Peter Gosling from Warlord Games. We chatted a bit that day and he showed me his new upcoming game Vanguard Normandy. And a few hours later, I ran into him at a food stall and he agreed to a spontaneous video. Met me back at their booth and he delivered a perfect presentation as a one-take record. Thank you, Peter. I personally haven't played Boltaction yet, as I hesitate to start yet another tabletop game. I already play a few. But I'm really looking to that new board game adaptation of Boltaction. By the way, I don't play Boltaction, yes, but that doesn't mean I didn't grab a bunch of their miniatures. Their paratroopers make great 40k planetary defense forces, with a few minor modifications. I hope you like my minis, and I hope you liked this video, because if you did, I might make a few more of those. So please tell us if you liked the video. So, subscribe, give it a like, and all the good stuff. And a big thank you to our supporters on Patreon. They keep the lights on around here, and for their support, they got to see this video well before anyone else. Our lovely supporters are Lone Wolf, Zed Gladys, Wrapped in Glass, Cookie, Revolve 556, Plasma Tome, Rainbow Flash, Grizzly Bear, Strange Module, Cop Fighter, Inter, CJ Surrett, Sir K, Ramgilama, Whiskey, Christoph, MTD, Hub, Leggy Boy, Daniel, Fralem, Crony XS, Theovio, iMantrix, Armon, Ozzy Loco, Rolling Rock, Sidonai, Bobcat Racer, Golden Fox, a heartfelt thank you for your support. To them and everyone else, thanks for watching. So, see you guys next time. Until then, have a nice day and as always, goodbye and guten Tag.